President Trump lands any minute now in Lake Charles, Louisiana, to visit the neighborhoods that were hardest hit by Hurricane Laura. We've got a crew traveling with him down to Louisiana as it happens. Last night, he was in New Hampshire for a campaign rally. Take a listen.
But now Biden wants to do another blanket shutdown, possibly, that would decimate the economy and cause suicides, drug overdoses, alcohol abuse, heart attacks, joblessness. You'd have jobs, all of the problems that it causes, because it's not just a one-sided equation. A shutdown causes big problems also. And at this point, when the economy is roaring back, we had record job numbers this last quarter, over 9 million jobs. We're going to throw that all out?
That was in New Hampshire, a state the president narrowly lost back in 2016, narrowly just a couple of thousand votes. He won Pennsylvania. One of the people who was an original supporter of the president's campaign in Pennsylvania, radio talk show host R.J. Harris, who joins us now. We appreciate your time, sir. Thank you. President says the economy's roaring back. Are you feeling that where you are?
Well, there's a sense of optimism here. The problem that we've had in Pennsylvania is it hasn't been President Trump's economy. It's been Governor Wolf's. And the governor pretty much shut down the state. And really, we're still in a mode where businesses, particularly entertainment, restaurants and what have you, are struggling to stay afloat. I was out to dinner last night. They're at 25%. And you should have seen this restaurant. There was over an hour wait, yet common sense in looking around the restaurant told you that they could have quite a few more people in there and still social distance, yet this governor really has put the straps on. I think there is as much optimism that we're going to get out of this as we have, because people know that Donald Trump is the president.
Do people in Pennsylvania, especially sort of the white working class voters that gave President Trump a victory in 2016, do they make the differentiation about why my paycheck is the way it is, or why I'm on unemployment, or why my wife's out of work, or why my neighbor lost their job? Do they make this distinction between the Democratic governor and the policies he's put in versus a Republican president and how President Trump has attacked the coronavirus?
Without question. And a lot of it is based on the words of not only Governor Wolf, but the Democrat Party. The people who are running for governor here in the state on the Democrat side have already said that they're against fracking. I mean, we're talking about, and you know, thousands of jobs in Pennsylvania. And it's not just the people who are working in the fracking industry, it's all the way down line. Even here in the Lancaster, Pennsylvania area, there are manufacturers that make a lot of parts for those people. So I think there is a great understanding that the Democrats offer nothing. I'd like to know one thing that Joe Biden offers the state of Pennsylvania, really.
The president just landed in Harrisburg. Pardon me, you're in Harrisburg. The president just landed down in Lake Charles, so we're going to monitor the shot there to see if he has anything to say as he comes off of Air Force One. Real quickly, one of the things the campaign is talking about to change the demographics, because they think the African-American turnout will be higher in places like Pennsylvania than it was in 2016, is registering and turning out working class white voters who didn't vote in 2016, may have never voted. Any anecdotal evidence that that's happening, or are there people calling into your show saying, I've never voted before, I'm not registered, but I'm registering for Donald Trump?
Without a doubt. And not only that, I carry applications with me and hand them to them. I tell people, listen, you can't pontificate about what's wrong with really going out to vote. And I think the African-American vote is not going to be, or is going to be a bigger turnout for Donald Trump. And at the RNC this past week, the Republicans are the only ones that are saying to the black community, you can do what you want in America. You know, they're actually
there is an attempt to go after the African-American vote by the Trump campaign in a way that we haven't seen. An interesting anecdote to your point about people pontificating about politics who aren't registered to vote. They can count on you for an application and for your thoughts on the World Wide Webs. R.J. Harris from Pennsylvania, voice of Harrisburg. We appreciate it, sir. Good to see you.
Thank you. Take care, Leland.